Morning.
Morning, Chief.
People ask me if there's an opiate crisis in Georgia. What do we seize?
We got a little bit of heroin, got some oxycodone, fentanyl, and hydrocodone. These are all the items we seized last night.
There'll be more of the same today. There'll be more of the same tomorrow. Law enforcement has to do whatever we can to stop this crisis. Otherwise, people will die.
From June 2016 to May 2017, the total number of opioid doses prescribed to Georgia patients surpassed 541 million. To put that number in perspective, that's approximately 54 doses for every man, woman, and child in Georgia. And today, 62% of drug overdose deaths in Georgia involve opioids. The significance of these figures is impossible to ignore. The opioid epidemic has become a rampant public safety threat, tightening its grip on our communities. That's why the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities and the Georgia Public Safety Training Center have partnered to bring law enforcement and other first responders the critical training you need on the front line against these dangerous drugs. Whether a 911 call points to accidental opioid misuse or addiction, both can result in a potentially lethal overdose. And this is where your training can make a world of difference.
Georgia's Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities is a public safety net whose mission is to provide easy access to high-quality care, especially for individuals with mental health needs, substance use disorders, and intellectual and developmental disabilities. DBHDD's State Opioid Response Grant Team has been doing a lot of work to train and equip law enforcement to combat the opioid epidemic. However, we realized that by working together with GIPSTIC, we're able to save more lives and work more efficiently. By working together, we can pool our resources more effectively and save an even greater amount of lives. We believe that through this holistic effort, we can break through silos, pool our talent and resources into a coordinated response to address this opioid crisis.
The Georgia Public Safety Training Center is Georgia's premier training academy for all public safety professionals. We service law enforcement, firefighters, dispatchers, coroners, National Guard members to perform their duties during civil unrest and natural disasters. We also offer over 400 different classes and a variety of offerings, in-person lecture classes, online learning, blended learning, and practical exercises. Another thing the training center does is we partner internationally and nationally to come up with best practices for public safety professionals. And by partnering with these international and national partners, we develop training that is the best practice that can be used in times of stress, civil unrest, and use of force cases. We believe that the opioid crisis that we're experiencing in the state of Georgia is one of those high-level liability areas for public safety. Our law enforcement officers in the state of Georgia are dealing with opioid crisis on a daily manner. They also deal with legal opioids and illegal opioids. These illegal narcotics are coming in from all over the world. The calls are continuing to grow as the opioid addiction continues to grow in the state.
The financial aspect of the opioid epidemic was quantified in 2015 when we realized that it was costing $78.5 billion to take care of this epidemic. That is the amount of money that it cost for property damage when someone is high and they cannot pay for the property damage, for the unpaid medical cost of individuals who have overdoses and are uninsured. It's also the cost associated of having to remove someone from the home, remove a child from the home because of the parent's overdose, and the amount of money for lost productivity that is costing this country because individuals cannot go to work because of their use of opioids. $78.5 billion. Opioids include prescription medications that are used to treat pain and illicit drugs like heroin. nearly half of young people who inject heroin began using prescription medication. Opioids impact many systems of the body, like altering your mood, constipation, and slowing down your breathing. Opioid receptor binding causes both the signs and symptoms of overdose, as well as the euphoric effects or being high. That fine line between euphoric effects and overdose is often easily and unintentionally crossed.
The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, is a federal agency within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The mission of SAMHSA is to reduce the impact of mental illness and substance misuse on America's communities. Opioids carry similarly high risks of dependency, addiction, and overdose. It's not uncommon for someone that uses opioids to develop a tolerance. Tolerance happens when the individual takes the opioids for a long period of time and their body becomes physically dependent upon the drug. And over time, they need more and more of the medication to experience the same effects, whether that's pain reduction or pleasure. A loss of tolerance occurs when an individual who's been taking opioids for a long period of time stops taking the medication. When someone loses tolerance and takes opioids again, they're at higher risk for serious adverse effects, including overdose. I think when a first responder encounters an individual who has overdosed, whether accidental or intentional, everybody's situation is different, and opioids don't discriminate. So anybody can be impacted, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, a teacher, a firefighter. Anybody can accidentally overdose. At that particular moment in time, the first responder's responsibility is just to do the reversal and saving a life.
These drugs are dangerous enough without the added threat of fentanyl, the silent killer. Fentanyl is the latest opioid that is responsible for the largest number of opioid overdose deaths. Fentanyl is a Schedule II prescription drug that is used for severe pain, like trauma, like a gunshot wound or a severe injury, or to treat someone's pain after surgery. Fentanyl can be mixed unknowingly into other drugs, like heroin, cocaine, pills, which can be extremely dangerous. Fentanyl is 100 times more powerful than morphine. Just 2 to 3 milligrams can kill someone unless someone is there to stop it.
Law enforcement is usually the first to arrive at an opioid emergency. Assessing the scene for signs of overdose and administering the proper intervention can effectively reverse what could have been a deadly outcome.
To successfully respond to an opioid overdose, first responders should use the 5 steps, one of which includes administering naloxone. Naloxone is a medication that's called an opioid antagonist, and the medication is specifically used to reverse opioid overdoses. When a person uses opioids, the opioids attach themselves to receptors in the brain. Unfortunately, these receptors also affect breathing. During an opioid overdose, too many opioids attach themselves to the receptors, which can slow or stop breathing. Naloxone works by blocking opioids from the receptors, quickly reversing the overdose. The good thing about naloxone is that it has no known side effects and will not cause harm even if an individual has not used opioids.
Georgia law enforcement officers have been sworn to serve and protect the communities in which they serve. That protection begins with having the proper personal protective equipment when dealing with opioid crisis. Protection also extends to you being familiar with how to clean and dispose of your personal protective equipment. Also knowing the situation and time to call hazmat in and proper disposal of these opioids and other hazardous substances. There's items that cannot be placed in the evidence locker. They need to be disposed of properly and in a safe manner. At the end of the day, we want to make sure you as an officer is safe and the citizens you serve are safe.
The techniques and resources presented in this series are designed to promote and introduce the complete law enforcement training available through the Georgia Public Safety Training Center. Our training begins with Georgia's SOAR, the State Opioid Adapted Response for Law Enforcement, where you'll learn the 5 steps for opioid overdose. We'll also share practicum opportunities for further education on opioid overdose situations, including officer safety tips for responding to opioid crisis and proper administration of naloxone using mannequins. We'll discuss opportunities for community partnership, awareness, and outreach. To take the complete opioid response law enforcement training, visit gypstick.org and click View Courses, or call the CIT section to schedule a class near you. We can never predict when officers will be called to the scene of an opioid overdose, only that you will be. Your careful, confident response can help keep opioid mortality in Georgia to a minimum. You can save lives.
210-211, respond to cardiac arrest, possible overdose, 5315 Ivy Road. EMS is 105 now.
210 and clear on call.